The Supreme Court has stepped in and taken charge of all petitions asking for regulation of social media. It has also given the government 3 months to come out with a set of rules that would govern social media. The government in turn says it's likely to notify its intermediary guidelines by mid-Jan 2020. So what does all of this mean? Essentially, there is a growing concern that while social media platforms have connected people in new and unimaginable ways, they've also created a monster in the form of fake news, hate speech. And the government says it's concerned these platforms could be used as a threat to national security. So essentially, the government wants to be able to see inside the network, figure out who is sending messages when, and they want the platforms to make this possible, make them responsible for passing on the information. The platforms like Facebook and others say they just can't do it, not here or anywhere in the world. Listen, in fact, to top lawyer Mukul Rohatgi, who is representing WhatsApp in the ongoing trial.
A WhatsApp chat is not stored by WhatsApp.
Right.
The WhatsApp calls, what actually a person speaks to somebody else, is not stored by WhatsApp. So we have no storage bank to tell somebody what A spoke to B 5 days ago. To tap a phone in future, we don't have any system of tapping in our own format. So if we have no storage, we cannot decrypt. So we don't have a key to unlock the lock. The other aspect is the aspect of privacy.
Right.
Privacy is also a fundamental right of a large, I have a large number of WhatsApp users.
Right.
They have rights of privacy. Whether their privacy can be breached, cannot be breached, is also to be balanced between the demand for this decryption and the rights of privacy. WhatsApp is not contending and will never contend that we should not bother about national security interests. But we have also explained to the court that WhatsApp is a platform which is available in a major part of the world. It's not one country, it's in hundreds of countries.
All right, the issue though goes beyond what Facebook and WhatsApp can do or cannot do. The issue is also one of privacy. Do we want the government of the day, whichever one it may be able to peer into our phones, computers and laptops and see what messages we are sending to whom? How will the courts and government protect that right of privacy and balance it with national concerns? To speak more on this, I'm joined today by Vineet Goenka, who's with the BJP and in fact used to head the IT cell of the party. Nikhil Pava, founder and editor of Medianama, is joining me today. And I'm also speaking with Apar Gupta. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us. Apar, let me begin by what you make now of the fact that all the petitions which were all over the country will be heard by the Supreme Court. For a starter, is that a positive move so that now we have clarity at least?
So, as litigants before the court itself, Internet Freedom Foundation, and I'm speaking as its executive director, we've taken a position that the transfer petition actually results and undermines the rights of ordinary users in multiple ways. The first thing is that the multiple cases which are being talked about are essentially just two active cases which are being heard together as effectively as one case before the Madras High Court. And in case the court would have given any kind of directions, would have jeopardized privacy or free expression for people, they would have had an opportunity of filing an appeal before the Supreme Court. And the other two cases which were also highlighted in this transfer petition, one case being in the Bombay High Court was dismissed, and the other case in the Madhya Pradesh High Court, actually notice was never issued on it and it was just at its initial stages. So this entire transfer of several cases or multiple cases all across India is actually not factually accurate as has been submitted to court, and this was the basis of us stating that the level of risk which was being posed was at a lower threshold. What we have seen in the past, and this is the risk which emerges quite often is that orders of the Supreme Court, which are essentially cautioning government to do its duty, are taken by the government as a source of power to in fact go ahead and violate the rights of ordinary users. We saw this in the mobile phone Aadhaar linkage case, in which orders were issued under Lok Niti Foundation, which was subsequently then clarified by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Based on the access to local courts, which should be available to ordinary Indians all across India against large platforms, and secondly, also judicial orders being misconstrued by government, as has been done in the past. We are opposing this transfer, but now that it has been transferred before the Supreme Court, we will contest this case on the basis of representing the rights of users to both privacy and free expression.
Okay, let's come to what is at stake over here. And of course, more litigation, if users feel there is a violation of their privacy, I assume they can continue to file these cases in various courts. There is no stopping that as it stands right now. But Nikhil, if you could just put this into perspective about why this is very important, and I come back to the intermediary guidelines of 2018, which we have had an opportunity to discuss before. In the short term, when we're saying that there are going to be new rules for social media, this is the first draft of what we're looking at?
No, Tamanna, I don't think these are going to be new rules for social media. They're going to be new rules for intermediaries. And intermediaries don't just include social media platforms. They also include ISPs, they include SaaS companies, they include any kind of chatting that might be involved. Let's say in an OLX, you would be discussing things with a merchant. Intermediaries are domain registrars, there are hosting service providers. So on the internet, either you're a content or service provider, or you're a content entity or a messaging entity or a service entity, or you're an intermediary. So this affects the functioning of the internet as a whole, whether it is from a privacy perspective, because there's a demand for traceability for all users of the internet, for all services, and therefore all intermediaries. And there's a demand for automated takedowns that's also being made for takedown of certain kinds of content, which everyone will have to implement, and therefore it's going to be quite an inconvenience. Automated takedowns are very tricky because they involve artificial intelligence, and that has not evolved enough to be perfect or to be accurate. And how do you recognize intent in some cases? You're effectively asking AI to do a court's job in terms of deciding whether something should go down or not, and so therefore that will lead to mass censorship.
I want to just walk this a step back. 1 minute, Nikhil. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to walk this a step back, because we're speaking right now. Apar and you are domain experts, and you're speaking right now assuming that whoever's watching this has all the background information. So let me just take a step back and let's come to this in more simpler terms. If I want to understand as a user how this is going to impact me and what these new rules mean. I'm using the term social media because most people are immediately concerned about whether anyone's looking at their Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram. So just in that context, but a good point explaining that this impacts anything or any conversation you have online. So take me back to those intermediary
anywhere
guidelines.
on any platform, on any forum.
Sure, those 2018 guidelines.
Anything that you message.
Yeah. Those 2018
any message
guidelines
that you put out at any platform, anywhere there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the gist of that, and is that what we can see most likely mid-January 2020? So what is that going to mean for me as a user?
So as a user, what it might mean is, let's say there is an app that comes up somewhere in the world, let's say Mexico, and there is a local registration or local incorporation requirement. They might decide not to service the Indian market and service Indian users because they might not want to pay the cost of having a local nodal officer registering whatever. So you will not be able to access some apps on the internet. Second thing is that because there will be, even at an ISP level, because there will be this automated takedown demand that comes in, ISPs might start putting in content filters for what you might be messaging or putting online or putting up on Facebook or even on your own blog. So there might be content filters that come into play because they don't want the liability for what you are putting on. If I'm assuming if that automated takedown requirement comes in, and so there might be some censorship of what you are putting on the internet. then there will be strong traceability requirements, which means that every service or every app that you use might want an ID or some kind of linkage. Every account that you sign up for might require some kind of a linkage to your personal identity. And I don't think Aadhaar they can take, but they might use another government identity.
Yeah.
So these are just three things that might change for users. From a user perspective, I think this is going to be pretty harmful for every single internet startup out there as well, because this is going to impact, they will have to implement some of these measures. And I think we need to take a step back and look at things and think, what is a reasonable demand over here? So is a reasonable demand of best case scenario of helping with traceability for in case there is some terrorist content which is a legitimate state interest?
They're saying we can't do it. We heard Mukul Rohatgi, who's
No, they can.
He's saying we can't do it.
No,
Okay.
what he has said is, so if you just let me say this, Tamanna, if let's say WhatsApp can provide metadata, what's wrong with that? That is also useful. Your police, your intelligence agencies can use that information to try and identify, or they can identify which number a particular message came from. It's just that you can't give them access to the entire messaging history of that individual, but you can at least give them some data, and they've said that they can give them metadata. Metadata is pretty useful. Intelligence agencies across the world are using metadata as well. So that's a reasonable requirement. Asking a platform to re-architect itself is not a reasonable requirement.
No, yeah, and they may choose not to then be here, but I think, you know, I want to take it to the end user, consumer. Vineet Goenka, you've been waiting patiently. Let me come to you with then the question that actually matters to everyone. Right now, more than, you know, how concerned Facebook and WhatsApp are or new businesses are, people watching this may be primarily concerned about their own privacy. Because no one will say that if there's something wrong happening, if there is, you know, a terror plot being hatched, that the government should not be able to stop it. But on the same side, I'm sure even you, Mr. Goenka, would not like that a government, and whichever government it might be, has the ability to look into your phone.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I had heard in my past life and in the past experiences that repeating a false claim again and again increases its believability. And I know the claims which have been made by other panelists are false claims because the proposal is yet to come. The government has gone to Supreme Court and requested that it requires 90 days to study, take advices, take the stakeholders on board, then come out with, you know, what it says is to be a draft policy. Now, I don't know where they get this kind of ideas. So, it seems that a deliberate attempt has been created to create false narrative.
He's accusing you of making false statements.
I will come to you.
So, let me correct him. He's accusing you of making false statements. There was a draft policy that all of us saw in January. So, a draft policy exists.
Listen, he was patient. He was patient. I will come to you.
He's making a false accusation.
I'm sure viewers will wait to see Nikhil's response because that's only fair. Nikhil is saying that he's not made a false statement. You must explain, Mr. Goenka, but yes, do say your piece.
I never interjected when people said if they are not making any false claim, they need not worry. The whole idea is deliberately interjecting will not help. I will never speak over others and not allow them to speak up. If in case they don't want me to speak and they want to create a false narrative, they are free to do that. If your channel promotes that, I have no objection. But let me put my points again, and you'll have to give me the chance again because he interrupted me. So one, how do they know that this is going to be proposed? Who are the people who are trying to tell them to propose these kind of things on their channel region? So let me request them, do not propose or do not create any kind of, you know, scene where you think that things will be wrong. A. Two, none of them represent user. And users are not that 2 or 3 people who come to them. Users are millions of users who are here, who are requesting to be protected, who are victims of the social media giants. So please understand, they don't represent the users. Users are the people who also come to us, and we also represent users. We represent the users, we represent the voters, we represent the citizen.
Okay.
And maximum users want themselves to be protected. Privacy is one part, which everybody is talking about. Even the government is bothered about privacy. That's the reason we have not introduced anything immediately. But at the same time, protection is very important.
Okay.
Can you please tell me what will you answer to the father of a daughter who has been maligned? What will you answer to the people who has been lynched because there is something like? And lastly, if social media giants earn turnover here, they better pay tax in this country and better have a traceability. And traceability is possible in technology. If they say
Okay.
it is not possible, they are free to shut themselves.
Okay.
Let me tell you, traceability is possible by technology and also possible by policies. And policies are framed after consultations. And once it is framed, yes, everybody has a right to react to it. But
Alright.
till it has not been framed, then nobody has a right to create unnecessary, incorrect, this thing because they are motivated
Responses-
people. So my request to the motivated
Okay.
people is,
So
please do
couple of
not
things.
mislead masses here. They are not fools.
So, a couple of things. You have accused your co-panelists of being motivated. I think it's only fair that they get a chance to respond to that accusation. You have talked about huge turnovers being made by these giants,
Of
so they
course.
should pay
How would
tax.
they know?
1 minute, Mr.
Government
Goenka,
has
I'm just
requested that it will
recapping.
file
I'm just
its
recapping.
reply
One second,
in
calm
Jan,
down, calm
and
down.
they
I'm
know
only
already that what
recapping.
things will
Hang
come
on,
up.
hang on. You have talked about two issues. If giants are making, social media giants or international giants are making huge monies, they should pay taxes and have
Three issues, madam.
traceability.
One,
There are two
nobody
different
represents
issues.
user.
Tax
I
is
also
different,
represent the user.
traceability is different. Okay, and then we come to the question of the intermediary guidelines. So now let me explain that context before I go to Nikhil and Apar. The intermediary draft guidelines were released in 2018, and to the best of our knowledge, the government has said that they may notify these very guidelines by 15th Jan 2020. So which is why we're referring to what the government has already put out in the public domain in 2018. It seems most likely that the same set of guidelines will come out by 15 Jan 2020. Could be, could not be, but it's the most likely one right now. So that's the
Exactly
context.
what I said.
Okay,
You have
can
been
we
misled.
can we now move on? Apar Gupta, you want to come in? You want to come in?
Yeah, very quickly. The first thing is that I would not wish to engage in a lengthy ad hominem, and any of your viewers are free to look at what Internet Freedom Foundation works at on our website internetfreedom.in, and it also gives the details of how ordinary Indian social media users fund us and how we are guided by constitutional protections. The second point of clarity I just wanted to add is just picking up from what you just said, Tamanna, on page 6 of the short affidavit filed by the Ministry of Electronics and IT, which was filed yesterday itself, and was in fact disclosed in court. On page 6, it says on 24 December, the draft Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines rules were made public for submission of comments, and it's still working on it. So actually, there's a basis to the criticism which has been made by Nikhil, which has been made by me. It's on the basis of a draft which does disclose government thinking, and our concerns emerge that after we have sent in these comments in a public consultation process, which wrapped up by the end of February by itself, there has been no movement, and we don't know where this is going.
Right.
And the proposals were fairly dangerous. They asked for message traceability, which is essentially that each one of your messages on WhatsApp has an identity number which ties in with you as a person who composed that message. Now, what's the flip side to that? If we look at an application which doesn't have end-to-end encryption in messaging, we can understand it better. So let's use the example of WeChat, which is used in China and which does not have end-to-end encryption, has the same kind of functionality as WhatsApp and even more. So it's actually because there's no surveillance reform in China, the rule of law system is not really good. There are block lists which are there where certain messages which are sent don't even get through because certain words are banned. The second thing is it's also used for pervasive surveillance. If you use certain words, then the intelligence agencies are automatically flagged with regard to how you are actually utilizing the messaging platform. This causes a chilling effect, which is that even though I am one of the 600 million people who use it for my daily conversation, but I'm not a terrorist, it just makes me feel scared for criticizing the government of the day. And with that, I'll just end this intervention.
Okay. So you've highlighted the big concern that can the power to trace be misused and used against citizens for political means. Unfortunately, I don't have too much time in this debate, so I'm going to skip right to closing comments, which is, can we find a middle ground? Nikhil, I know you want to rebut, take some time to rebut, but then can you come to the point of, can we find a middle ground between privacy concerns as well as, the fact is fake news, hate speech, all of these WhatsApp rumors is a problem. People are actually losing lives. So we know it's a problem.
Yeah. So Tamanna, I'm not going to rebut what Mr. Goenka said because I think Apar has already addressed what the points that he had made, and frankly, I don't think his points are grounded in Mr. Goenka's comments are grounded in reality. We already know what has been happening over the last 1 year, but just on solutions and a reasonable way forward, I think there are reasonable demands for traceability that can be made after our surveillance agencies are brought under the rule of law, and once we have surveillance reform where these demands for traceability have to be proportionate and they have to be reasonable. So let's have a best effort scenario where if let's say a platform under a legitimate court order is asked to give certain information on a particular user or a related message, the platform should do the best process possible based on the ability of the platform itself, and so that it doesn't have to re-architect itself in order to give this information.
Yeah.
So in case of WhatsApp, that might be some metadata that they might have that they can help with, and on the fake news issue, which is a very, very important issue, I think what we can do and is what was done in case of the elections, where the Election Commission had certain requests that were made to various social media platforms about that they have to, that when being flagged, certain content has to be taken down.
Yeah.
There has to be transparency and disclosures that are made.
Okay.
So we already have a working model over there that can be implemented in
Yeah.
this case with a little more reasonable approach for
Okay.
takedown of content, because you can't necessarily expect them to keep monitoring, keep taking down content.
No,
Automated
and
takedowns should
takedown of
should
content
be
cannot
happening.
be because one side doesn't like
can't
what
be-
the other
it
side
can't be automated
says.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So
Tamanna,
okay.
it definitely should not be automated
Yeah.
because that will lead to censorship.
Yeah.
I also think that this local incorporation is going to hurt India,
Okay.
and it's going to hurt
I'm-
Indian companies if every government starts doing it. That approach
Okay.
also needs to go.
Okay.
We
Mr.
don't want a
Goenka-
Chinese wall around the Indian internet. I think we're not that kind of country. We're a democracy, and let's
Yeah.
keep it that way.
Okay, so giving the benefit of doubt, saying that okay, these were draft guidelines, let's see what's going to come. Mr. Goenka, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to request you to be brief. Do you see a middle path? Do you see a middle path where you can let these companies function? And of course, if there is wrongdoing, then ask them for help. But you cannot have the ability to look into anyone's information at any point.
Your question is very lengthy, so I'll have to speak something. Tell me, how do you answer a mother whose daughter's photograph has been used in a pornography without permission of the girl or the mother? How do you answer to the person who has been lynched? How do you address the issue of national security? Twitter gives an ad, Twitter gives a tweet which has been promoted, paid tweet by Khalistani supporters. How do you take an action on that? Please tell me. And those people who call themselves to be Messiah or free user, they have to come out and tell how many members do they have, what is their mechanism of funding, that also has to be asked. Whereas the government feels that there has to be element of traceability. There are 5 people, understand this, a person who is an author who writes the tweet or a post or some creative. Then there is an amender who amends that. There is a third person who is an amplifier. 4th is the platform and 5th is the service provider. Now here, each of them can be easily tracked by technology. It is available, which can be done. It's an arrogance of these technological giants. They say, we will not give it to you, come whatever happens. People die. There are
What is
suicides in this
the-
society.
no, Mr.
Who is
Goenka, let me
responsible
ask
for
you-
this?
let me
Government
ask
is
you the
responsible for this.
counter.
So
Let me
government
ask
has
you
a
the
right to
counter.
come out with guidelines.
Where
Hold on a
is
minute,
the-
hold on a
where
minute,
is the
madam.
safeguard?
Hold on a
One
minute.
minute, one minute,
When it
Mr.
is a
Goenka.
national,
No, no,
so
one
hold on a
minute.
minute.
One
These
minute, just-
people whose source of funding is not known,
You
whose
have
organizations do
already
not
said
have a
that
membership
point. That's why I'm
system.
going to cut in
We
because
will
you are
take
now
it very
repeating
seriously.
yourself.
We all
Mr.
take
Goenka,
them
just
seriously.
listen to my
But at
question.
the same
Just listen to
time,
my question, please. I request you. Please listen to my question. I'm saying that taken. People
Ma'am,
who
I never
suffer-
repeated anything. Please
people,
relay that.
people
Whatever
who
I repeated,
suffer-
please tell me.
People who suffer should not suffer, correct. But what is the safeguard and guarantee that this will not be misused by a government in power? It's yours today, it could be someone else's tomorrow. That will not be used against political
Please
opponents,
tell me one
against
case where it has been misused.
criticism.
Please tell me
Sir,
one case
there are
where it has been
1
misused
million
by any
cases
government.
about people who have put out posts on social media against anyone in power, have found
Please
themselves
quote that
behind
one
bars.
of them on your television.
Sis-
I'll come and
66A
rebut that,
has
please.
been misused
Please do that,
so
ma'am.
many times.
Any day, please give
so
me
the
one case.
precedent is a little scary. What is the safeguard? I'm asking you, Mr. Goenka, what is the safeguard?
There are checks and balances, Tamanna ji.
Yeah.
In this country, this has been a very,
What
very
checks and
fairly
balances, Mr.
responsible
Goenka, are there?
democracy, barring 2.5 years of
What checks and
emergency.
balances are there?
There are checks and balances. If an officer overboards himself, there is
What are
court
the
and
checks
there are other
balances,
legislations
Mr.
which will
Goenka?
take care of
Why
it.
isn't the court order in place
cannot
for it?
put lives of
Why
our
isn't the
people-
court
One
order
minute,
in place
one minute.
to
Two
surveil
people
someone
don't talk
for
at a
election
time
internet?
because you
6
can't
people
understand anyone.
and
Hang on,
funded by
wait.
people whom we don't know.
Yeah.
Raise questions.
Okay. The funding thing is like a personal barb, you know.
Can I continue, ma'am?
I don't have time for you, so you know you and Apar can get into it.
It's all public.
You have to understand what is
Tamanna,
the
it's
motivation.
Tamanna, it's all public. It's all public. It's
Yeah.
on our
Go
website.
to the
I
site
would
and
invite
see.
Mr.
Okay.
Goenka to go and look into it.
Okay.
We are not funded by
No,
electoral
and
bonds.
the fact
So,
is that
yeah.
you know IFF is not the only organization who is making this point. So like a personal
never
barb
called
really
you,
doesn't
sir.
do
Why do you
anything.
get
The
pinched?
fact
I'm
is,
saying the
Mr.
people
Goenka,
have been
I think
funded and
everyone
motivated.
actually on the panel, it's not like there are many divergent interests. No one wants social media to be used to an end where it causes fear, terror, kills someone, lynches. No, I don't think
Exactly.
anyone on the panel disagrees with
Can
you and
please
says we
answer me,
want
what
that
does
to
the girl
happen.
do whose photograph is being used in pornography? You are not addressing that issue, ma'am.
No, of course, it's a dangerous issue. I'm a woman and I have also, you know, had to see horrible things on my social media accounts.
So we have to protect that girl.
Yeah. So,
What do you do for that?
But at the same time, how will you make sure that someone's privacy is protected? You've not
What
answered
do
that
you do with
question,
the
Mr.
people who
Goenka.
deliberately
Apart
create,
from
you know,
saying
religion
checks and
issues?
balances, can you give me one specific way in which
Of course, privacy has to be there. That's the whole
one
reason people are
specific
talking
way,
about this, discussing
one
this.
specific
Because we
way,
want the
instead of
privacy
just
to be
saying checks
upheld.
and balances, one thing.
The right
one
of
point.
freedom is to be protected.
Yeah, tell me one way, one safeguard.
Simple, ma'am. You put in policy frameworks. And I think the policy frameworks are very clear. There can be traceability.
What?
The traceability has to be put. And why should not be there a KYC? There can be a KYC to every account.
No. How is that a safeguard for my privacy?
Just
KYC is a further invasion.
Tamanna,
KYC is a further
if I may-
invasion of privacy. It's not a
Of course.
safeguard. Can you name one
Why do you
safeguard?
fear privacy? Do you think any agency or anybody would like to track you just because you
I
write
don't
something
know.
against the government?
No, I don't
Had
know.
that been the case,
You know, it's-
India would not have been a dominant
It's not just about
democracy.
the government. The fact is anything you browse
Please answer
online.
my question, which is pertinent.
The-
What do you do with the child who has been abused?
Tamanna, if I may.
Okay,
What do you do
but
about
I'm
the cyberbullying?
I'm so over my time, but I have to
never
give.
answered
Okay,
that.
Nikhil,
These
last
people
word.
never answer these
Nikhil,
other
last
questions.
word, and then I have to end. Yes, Nikhil.
What is being suggested over here with no safeguards being recommended by this other panelist is basically the creation of a surveillance state and a censorship state.
Yeah.
You're basically looking to ape China. And for everyone watching this, is this
That
what
is
you
your
want
assumption and your
India's
deliberate
internet to be?
attempt
Do you
to
want to be
malign the
censored? Do you
government
want to
and
be
agencies.
surveilled?
Yeah.
This is
No
this
basis.
is
You're
what
not
they're trying to
doing this in
recommend
India.
right now.
I'll tell you. I'll
There
tell
is
you
no
what I
safeguards
think.
that they've mentioned.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think most people will say. I cannot claim to speak on anyone's behalf. But just to wrap this up, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. What I think most people will say is, no, we don't want to live in a surveillance state. Yes, we want our privacy, but yes, we also want to make sure that the mischievous elements who misuse these platforms are brought to book. And the solution can't be to ban the internet at that spot where there could be trouble. There has to be a better way. Hopefully, the governments, the courts, and the experts will find a way together. That's all the time I have for this evening on the India Development Debate. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.